So first of all, what is the Joint Forces Command? For our American friends and visitors, it's not GIFCOM, because it is something else. We are at the stage of infancy, in the proper sense of the word, and I am still officially designated as the Joint Force Commander, and I actually take up the full authority on the 2nd of April. Why the 2nd of April? Again, for our visitors from overseas, because our financial year starts on the 1st of April. So there is no mystery to that. That's just what we do in Britain. The birthday of the Royal Air Force, for example, is the 1st of April. So, what is it? Well, we will have command of all the overseas permanent bases, even though the map of the world hasn't come up, and I think most of you know where they are. We have command of operations in its broadest sense, although, of course, the Chief of Defence Staff will direct those operations. I will hold the budget for those operational entities. That, of course, includes my old command of the Permanent Joint Headquarters, Special Forces, and now, importantly, cyber. In a very important and relevant development, it will also include the whole of defence intelligence, which includes the many parts. And I know that my friend and colleague, Major General Jeremy Thomas, has already updated you on the views from that specialist part of the organisation. And then, of course, the bit that is a little different, and I think very exciting, I will also have responsibility for the whole of the Defence Academy. And moving that sort of link between training, education, operations, intelligence into a coherent model, I think is very exciting, challenging, and potentially rewarding. And, of course, there are other areas that are coming in which we are still coming to terms with. The Defence Concept and Doctrine Centre, the thinking part of the MOD, if you like, where thinking is cheap and getting things right at the thinking stage is something we absolutely have to do when resources are tight. And then the Surgeon General, who is the British title for all the medical support of the armed forces. And by the way, that is a world-class organisation. For those who don't know, the UK military hospital in Afghanistan is regarded by the National Health Service as at the very top of clinical excellence. And what the UK medics have achieved in terms of the procedure from the point of wounding on the battlefield to the end of the recovery phase is truly remarkable. We need to sort of protect that and develop it for the future. And then there'll be a bunch of other smaller units that currently reside with a joint title, which over time, and that time will be short, we will decide how to integrate their output into our enabling command. So what does it do? Actually, I am sharing this with you for a purpose. Because historically, most people in defence have tended to know what armies, navies and air forces do. It's obvious what they do, isn't it? Well, actually, unusually, this is my mission. And again, I make the point for the second time on purpose, this is not the mission as sort of the GIFCOM mission was in the United States. Because, of course, in the United States, the combatant command model is the model from which you command and control operations. So although I will not be directing those operations, I will be, through all these words, enabling those operations. And as we move to a focus on contingency, my own focus and that of my command group will be very much on contingency, so thinking about future operational designs. So that's where the Joint Force Command is in its infancy. We intend to take some hormones and grow quickly, and we are on a journey to initial operating capability by April, full operating capability the following April. So several years shorter than what perhaps many of us would have grown up with in former times. So it is a genuine need for transformation, and already we're behaving differently as a headquarters. The headquarters element will be a fraction and a many, many small fraction of those sorts of equivalent single service headquarters. I'm looking at around about 100 people to be the headquarters for what I've described. So therefore, it will be different. So why am I here? Am I saying the same thing as I said last year? Well, last year, of course, I was speaking from the operational level and sharing our experience of geography on the battlefield. I'm now reflecting not just on that experience, but also on the journey of integration of intelligence into the Joint Forces Command, and that journey is upon us. And of course, we have to reflect on, learn lessons from our experience on operations. I think we're quite good at writing it down in this country. I think we're less good at actually changing our behavior as a result of it. And there is a tendency for clever people like you, no doubt, to accuse us of always trying to fight the last war. And with the portfolio of the Joint Forces Command and the authority of that mission and mandate I've just shown you, I honestly think not only we can challenge that tendency, but we will. And my word, we have to. You don't need a lecture on why we have to, because of the way the world is and the challenges that throws up, and I suspect that will come out in the panel discussion, the blurring of overseas intervention operations with homeland security, the complexity of environmental challenges, and so on and so on and so on. And there's some excellent work undertaken by the Defence Doctrine Centre here on futures, as we call it, which I commend to you if you want to have a look on the web. It is really quite excellent. So that is the need, is obvious. Therefore, the journey of collaboration and integration is upon us. I remember being told by several of you when I was first young two-star in the intelligence collection business, that the F word, the fusion word, was too much for Britain at the time. It was all a bit stressful for the community. I think we've got to get over that, because actually the customers are at risk of outpacing the community who supports them. And that's a theme I'll keep coming back to. And so we must watch for duplication of product, too many products that are almost very similar, and get the product in time to the user. Now, my perspective has changed. That user might be the Prime Minister. We now have a National Security Council, which is a very interesting development in the UK's sort of security architecture, and a very important development. Understanding how we support from the community that I represent that National Security Council process is an important question. So time is important to anybody who produces intelligence or data or decision support. Inevitably, as well, we have to think about how we share. Our own children, I'm not speaking for everyone, but say my own children, are way ahead of me in data handling, that's an understatement, understanding what they can do and can't do with the information they have. And of course, our own workforce are often ahead of the policies, and I suspect General Jerry made this point. So there is an issue around security, there's an issue around sharing where we can, protecting where we need, and there's an issue about layers. Is it now appropriate to have so many layers of classification, or can we simplify that model across the community in order to add to the understanding? So that's my thesis, which you can challenge. Now, last year I was very polite. This year I'm going to be less polite. I think it's high time, in my view, you may challenge me, you will challenge me, one of two of you, I know that we downplay rather than overplay the hallowed distinction between people who collect data and people who analyze data. I think that boundary's been blurred for years. The technology up there on the third floor demonstrates that actually exploitation is the reality. So we need to change our structures to reflect that integrated approach. And we also need to care for and develop our specialists accordingly. Again, from a broader perspective than the tactical, we haven't been smart or savvy in many of our operations. It's taking us too long, and I speak in my Sunday job as an honorary colonel in the Intelligence Corps, which I'm very proud. It's taken us too long to develop the deep specialist knowledge of the places where we're operating. So there is a proper role for specialist knowledge. But our structures, tribes, call them what you will often mask that, or the tribal chieftains will declare that the generalist model will prevail, therefore the specialist is rate capped or rank capped, whatever the structure or model you have. And I would challenge that. We have to develop specialists and find the right place for them. I'm also on a journey, and I would hope in this room that everybody's with me, to use visualization, mapping, and so on at the highest levels of government in a more structured and regular way. I can only speak as a British person now and as a British commander, but I am struck powerfully, like with a wet fish, at how text-based we are. When actually, instead of writing an extra page of your service paper, a map would have reduced your service paper to a paragraph. There is still this reluctance to accept that. And I would hope here, of all places, we can perhaps make progress on actually moving those clever products from the back office to the top of the deciding chain, whatever that chain is. And I really do mean what I say about maps, not just because I'm an obsessing middle-aged geographer, which some might say would be a fair description, but because we've got to make sure the map adds the value for the customer. It isn't cluttered. I'll come back to that. And as everybody knows, far better than me, we really have to tackle data management. And I'm really, really impressed with my new portfolio at some of the people I've met in a short time who really get this and are doing a lot about it. They don't, however, currently sit in the intelligence community. They sit elsewhere. And again, a second-order advantage of the Joint Forces Command will be to steal best practice from around that portfolio to enable slicker, better, quicker data applications in the future. So we're all in the business of creating situation awareness. These are the techniques we're using. I would again hope that General Jerry went through them this morning from a UK perspective, and I know that you'll get the perspective from other nations during the week. So I'll just mention a couple of points. I think we've been pretty slow in government. No, I can't say government. We've been pretty slow in the military to develop enterprises through networks. We've been pretty slow to break through the policy constraints around those networks to actually make a slightly anarchic, slightly chaotic solution work. And I think SIGINT has got a lot to teach us here, where there have been people out there with sort of a slightly anarchic approach through chat rooms for a long time. So I do think we can learn from other communities. And I've seen some of the tools here. They're all, no doubt, have their places. But the time it takes to get them from your conceptual dream or the innovative startup company's reality through a process of clunky procurement, whether it's for operations or not, has got to be challenged, if not changed. And I'm definitely doing that. I'm living that dream every single day. And I'm very happy to take advice on it. So we do have that geospatially-enabled information environment. It's pretty complicated. And some of the deciders at the top of governments can be put off by how complicated it is. So the warning is simple. Make complexity simple for the people at the top, and you will often achieve a better result. The situation awareness we're using has come a long way very quickly, and I commend those in industry for your support of us in that journey. And the stuff we're doing now is far, far more focused on the customer and far, far better than it was. But I put it to you again from a UK perspective. I'm sure other nations here would have a different view. Has that product been designed with the width of the pipe to the customer in mind? Or are you just assuming that's somebody else's problem? And that's a question that perhaps you want to come back to me on. You could argue that now, under the Joint Force Command idea, that's my problem. And I'll take that challenge on. But don't expect me to take that challenge on silently, because you may then have to tune your product to the bandwidth available. And that is something that we do still need to work on. And it's almost actually, it's not really a technology issue. And I just imagine that the vendors here will be delighted to hear me say this. It's really a cultural issue. So I'm talking about the traditional approach to collection and analysis has got better and better. Everybody's a collector out there on the battlefield, and they're fusing information. They're doing it very well. And I pay absolute tribute, as I have to the medics, to the Geo Sappers of 4-2 Regiment, who are deployed in large numbers in Afghanistan and other operations, who do that point-of-the-spear stuff. It is something that we in Britain should be proud of. But we really have to guard against giving every battle group commander every conceivable geography product he's ever dreamt up, and or endlessly refining it for the wrong reasons. I think now we need to accept that the data's out there, the information is available, and we have to move quickly to adapt to our savvy customers. The iPad generation, the guys and girls coming back from Afghanistan who have had that experience of soaked ISR, layered, multi-layered tipping queuing, all the concepts that we as a community have been talking about for decades now, because there is a tendency, if we're not careful, that they will be out there ahead of the community that support them. And there could be then some friction and frustrations to follow, particularly in a contingent environment where we haven't been for 10 years, where some of the products that I'm about to show you on Afghanistan, which are brilliant, top of the range, may not work if we've just pitched up somewhere else, which is on the bottom end of every intelligence collection priority list, where we may then find some very disappointed customers. And if I would observe in the privacy of my 350 new friends that on a couple of exercises recently, which we do still do, by the way, in order to better prepare for the future, the cry of, but it wasn't like this in Afghanistan, is more than out there. It's almost the silent part of every conversation. So we need to guard against that, or think about it a bit more carefully. But meanwhile, the act of the decade-long approach in Afghanistan continues to really be effectively the gold standard of tactical support for operations. It is truly impressive. All sorts of purposes, all sorts of uses, with rapid change of integration of traditional mapping and imagery. Again, I'm sure General Thomas touched on this. Event analysis. I think actually there's a bit more to go here in Britain. I think we've got a way to learn. I think we are still on the journey of document exploitation, looking back at events to see patterns to look forward. I think there's a bit more to do there, but there's some very clever tricks to be learned. Melding environmental information in order to support tactical decisions. Good old-fashioned sappery here. You never have enough sappers on operations. Where do we build the bridge, etc. Turning to home, how to support the Homeland Security piece. I know that the next panel will cover that. So the opportunities are out there. I've said all these things many times, so I'm not going to repeat them. But I'm still struggling a bit with how to create those partnerships. We've done a lot on operations. We are really now joining up the dots on current operations. What I've got to do is work out how to learn those lessons and apply them for future use, and make sure that we can do this stuff in other places. Now, General Thomas touched on Witten this morning. I will say something provocative just to keep you awake before the panel, because I've nearly finished. Witten is more than a place. It is the opportunity for this community in Britain to get up to the hunt and change the way we do business, to break those barriers, to take a proper multidisciplinary approach to problem solving, to focus on outcomes and effects. It is a superb facility which we will exploit to the maximum. And we're already conducting some very interesting and innovative thinking on partnerships. So Witton is more than a place to us, and it is a reality. It is almost, the build is almost finished. And if you watch Grand Designs, we're at that awful second fit stage where all the other trades come in and make a mess of the swanky new building. But it is a reality. That's the point to leave you with. So I stick with what I always try and say, which is geography enables understanding when properly applied. There is an important role here for industry to take us through the next generation of information management, networks, and so on, how to apply geospatial, GeoInt to the cloud type ideas that are out there in government as well as in industry. And we have to integrate, because if we don't integrate with the deciders, the people we support, be they tactical commanders, operational centers, or strategic customers, in the time of austerity, let's be honest as a community, if we do not do the integration thing, they will not look kindly on us. I think we also have to think about who the customer is. And sometimes that's not as easy as I'm trying to make it sound. So therefore, people like me and my command group are going to help here with simplifying how we do the tasking for some of the capabilities we represent. I said it last year, I'd make no apologies with ending with my cry to make complexity simple. Otherwise, we will be overfaced by the world we're in. Thank you.